People's political behaviors frequently does not match their rhetoric. Although they complain about government intervention in their lives, they tend not to re-elect inactive politicians. But a politician's activity consists largely in the passage of laws whose enforcement affects voters' lives. Thus, voters often re-elect politicians whose behaviors they resent.
All right, so what is our conclusion here?
I would say it's the part where they say the the last sentence.
Okay, you've done this a couple times. You've picked a subsidiary conclusion.
Yeah.
So we're saying that people's political behavior frequently does not match their rhetoric. So I'm like, okay, but how does it not match their rhetoric? Like, so that's saying that like who they vote for, right, doesn't match what they're actually saying. So this would be like saying, I can't even think of an example, but all right, but going on to the next sentence, although many complain about government intervention in their lives, they tend not to re-elect inactive politicians. All right, so they're saying so people complain about people being involved in their lives. They don't re-elect people that don't do anything. But a politician's activity consists largely in the passage of laws whose enforcement affects voters' lives. So it's telling us like, hey, but this is what a politician's activity like actually does. Thus, voters often re-elect politicians whose behavior they resent. What does the fact that voters often re-elect politicians' behavior they resent, what does that support?
It's supporting like the bigger idea that people's political behavior does not match.
Yes, like this is showing us one way that their political behavior does not match their rhetoric, right? Because so how we could test this is people's political behavior frequently does not match their rhetoric because voters often re-elect politicians whose behavior they resent. Do you see that?
Yeah. So it's
so what's going on here is all of this is support for that last sentence.
Yeah.
That's a subsidiary conclusion. And then we use this subsidiary conclusion to support the main idea of our argument.
It's basically saying why
it's showing us what political behavior match their rhetoric. Yep.
And so like the subsidiary says, hey, they often re-elect whose behavior they dislike or whatever. And then it comes back like full circle, like, oh, people's political behavior does not match.
Yes. Awesome. So then, which of the following most accurately describes the role played in the argument by the claim that people tend not to re-elect inactive politicians? So what is the role of that sentence in relationship to our conclusion?
So we would have to look for something along the lines of like it's the subsidiary conclusion. Wait, which one?
No, that's not sorry, nope, here.
Sorry. I was in my own world just now. They tend not to re-elect inactive politicians. So doesn't this some way like support the last sentence, and the last sentence is the subsidiary conclusion?
Yeah, it's showing us how people, yeah, I would say so. So let's go ahead and start with A.
So, okay, yes. So it just goes. No.
Yeah, it describes a thing for which the argument's conclusion is offered as an explanation. So does it describe a thing that our conclusion is trying to explain? No, you were right.
Oh, no. I'm like reading it back to like make sure I was right. And I don't think it works.
Yeah, it's not saying like it's something that the conclusion is trying to explain. No.
If that was the case, then the last if that was the case, we wouldn't have the first sentence really, and we would have the last sentence.
Describes a thing for which the argument's conclusion. Yeah.
So B, it is a premise of offered to support the conclusions? No, because we already discussed that the last sentence is not the
Okay,
main
but
conclusion.
it's not the main conclusion, but is it a conclusion?
It is, yeah.
Yeah,
Is
this is actually what you said. You said in your own words, you said we're looking for something that says that it's supporting the subsidiary conclusion that in turn,
the subsidiary conclusion comes back around to the,
but is this true?
yeah,
Yes.
I
Even
believe so.
even though it doesn't say that it's supporting the main conclusion, it just says in support of the conclusion. So it doesn't say the main conclusion.
Okay, so that would like trip me out. It's like in terms of wording, like
Yes,
the wording
it's
of
true.
that.
Technically, this is true because technically this last sentence is a conclusion. And you were right. This sentence does support it. Now, if this went on to say, which in turn supports the main conclusion, it would be right as well.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go on to C.
Is offered as an example. No, it's not an example.
They tend to, well, I guess it could be an example of like what they do,
Yeah.
of how politicians
But I don't think that's necessarily what they're looking for.
it is offered as an example of how a politician's activity consists largely in the passage of laws. It's not an example of this, though.
Yeah.
What is it an example of?
Let's see. It's an example of the last sentence.
Yeah, an example of how people do something that, yeah, whose behavior doesn't a behavior they resent or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. What about D?
It is a generalization based on the claim that people complain about government intervention in their lives. No.
Yeah, it's not a generalization. We don't
No.
we don't take the claim that people complain about government intervention in their lives and then make a generalization from that. Like, therefore, government is terrible or something like that. Like, no, that doesn't happen.
And it is cited as evidence that people's behavior never matches their political beliefs. Okay, that would have tripped me out.
Yes. Okay, so what makes this one wrong?
It's not.
There's one word that makes this one wrong.
It's, hold on. Evidence.
Nope. I would say it is cited as evidence of people's behavior. I would say that this is all accurate up to this point.
Oh, the word never.
Yes, we're
Because
not.
we said frequently does not. We didn't say that. Yeah.
We're not saying, yeah, we're not trying to prove that their behavior never matches. We're just saying frequently they do things that are dumb.
So that would be considered like too strong.
Yeah, that's a perfect example of an answer that is too strong because of the word never. And so that's why for this one, even if you went through it, even though I don't love B because it says that main conclusion, I'd be like, okay, this one, every word of this is actually accurate.
Yeah, it's the part where it says I would like initially doing this, I would have been caught between B and E, and I would have picked honestly E because the word in B conclusion, this is the conclusion. I would have taken it as the main conclusion.
Right? It's just saying the conclusion, which technically this is still a conclusion. Yep, perfect.
Okay.